everyone, it's Stephanie Kakris here, and welcome to the second webinar on that's as an adjunct to the Money Mindset Makeover email program. We have a very small, intimate pair of us on today. Julie has kindly joined us live. Nice to see you here. And
Thank you.
Julie has actually, I'll let Julie tell the story, but she's actually done this course twice before. And she was just telling me the other day how in about week 3, she's sort of fallen off and not continued on with the exercises. So this time she was determined to do all of it. Would you like to talk a little bit about that? Because it's been going on. This is, what are we up to, week 4 now? A few people will be thinking maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed with having not kept up, or not sure whether they should pick it up or go back to where they stopped or whatever.
Yeah, so I noticed last week that I was reading emails that I didn't recognize from the other 2 times. And as I said, I think in the last call, I really made a commitment to myself to do the whole program and do all the exercises and see what would happen. And so last week, I still kept doing the exercises, and some really phenomenal things happened for me last week. And I launched my online offline training program at the same time as starting this course. So that's been sort of happening in the background. And a really exciting thing that happened for me on Thursday was I put a Facebook post up as an event, because one of my clients asked me if I would post it as an event so she could share it with her friends. And so I did that, and a few hours, and I only invited 38 people out of my list, and a few hours later one of them said she was going, and I've never had that before. So I phoned her and she gave me her credit card there and then, and it's a $2,000 program. So that was really unexpected, like talking about unexpected income coming in. And that's one of my mantras, is that money comes into my bank account from expected and unexpected sources. That was really unexpected. And I found out that my work had gone into China on the 20th of July. I emailed my contact in China about my online program, and they've asked me to send examples or samples of that program, and it may well become a Chinese program that I can sell. So look, would that have happened anyway? I don't know, but the exciting thing is that I've got momentum, and I feel like when I stopped at the 3-week mark, I lost my momentum in continuing to keep this going. And I think it's really important, if you're serious about changing your mindset around money and having that vibration as your default vibration moving forward, it's really important to keep up the momentum and do all of the exercises, because the ones that we did last week were really key to what I feel is my shift in awareness and consciousness. So yeah, I'm some days I think, oh, I haven't got time for that, but I make myself do the 5 or 10 minutes, and it actually creates a shift in my thoughts. So thank you, Steph.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I'll share my screen. It's a beautiful segue into what I thought that I would teach today, which is about the brain and about how the brain works in order to drive what our actions, the actions that we take when it comes to our money. So if you've ever found yourself going to the shops and setting yourself a budget for a certain amount that you'd like to spend, and ending up spending a lot more and coming home and thinking, how did that actually just happen? Because I knew how much I wanted to spend when I got there, but but I ended up, spending a lot more than I actually had anticipated. And the answer to that is a lot of our behavior and also our wealth building behavior, not just our wealth, spending behavior, is actually formulated with our subconscious program. And I'm just trying to find my keynote, which has disappeared on me. Oh, okay. I had to restart my computer quickly at the start of this because my Zoom camera wasn't working. So, okay, so now that I've got that, I shall share my screen again. So the work we did in week 3, where we had a look at our programs, all of that stuff comes from the subconscious brain, and it needs a lot of repetition to change those programs around, and emotions as well. So, where are you? No, that's not it. Here it is. Sorry about that. Got too many windows open and I couldn't find it. Good. Oh, so hopefully you should be able to see my screen now. And yeah, and I've also, a couple of people apologised that they couldn't be on the session today. So, and they've emailed me a couple of questions. So I'll answer those after I do this little teaching spiel. So in terms of the subconscious brain is actually by far the main majority of our brain. And I pinched this little image here off the internet, off Google Images, but it's actually a little bit inaccurate because down the bottom here, about 5% should be the unconscious mind, which is the mind that controls most of our bodily functions. So that should be included down the bottom here. But for the most part, the conscious mind, which is our thinking brain, which is the brain that we hear in our thoughts and that we listen to talking in our head all day, actually only makes up 12% of our whole brain power. The subconscious mind, which is where all our behavioural programs are stored, and I'll talk about that in a second, that is actually the vast majority of our brain, and that's what actually drives our behaviour. And until we bring the subconscious programs to the conscious brain, and we also need to change our neural pathways, which I'll talk about in a second, that's actually how we change our habits and how we change our behaviour and how we change our end results as well with things. So in terms of our subconscious brain, which is the vast majority of our brain, it contains all of our memories. Our emotions are all in the subconscious brain. There are roughly, and there's probably more than this, but approximately 100,000 stored programs in our brain. Now, that includes programs like things that we can do without needing conscious thought. So walking, talking, eating, sleeping, all those kind of day-to-day things that when we were babies, we learned how to do, and they required a lot of our conscious thought. Even driving is a stored program if you've been driving for a while. So when you were very first driving, it required a lot of conscious thought. So you needed to think about, your steering and where the car was on the road and, how much you needed to press the accelerator. And I learned to drive in a manual car. So then there was the clutch and the gears and all that to think about. And there was no way that I could have the radio on or that I could talk to a passenger or, multitask or think about anything else while I was learning how to drive. And it's the same with any skill that we learn. But then with repetition, it becomes a program. It gets stored in our subconscious brain, and we do it without thinking. So I don't know about you, but most people have had an experience where they've driven home from work or from a route that they do often, and they've driven in the driveway and the conscious mind has been completely thinking about something else. And you drive in the driveway and I think, oh my God, I don't even know how I got home. I hope I didn't run a red light, or, I hope I gave way to someone because I was just in deep thought about something else, because my subconscious program was driving the car. So I didn't actually need to think about, okay, the light's red, I need to stop here. So there are also, our subconscious brain also, is responsible for our dreams and our imagination, and there's loads of other things. But for today, we're going to focus on these programs that are stored in there because we've got a whole lot of money programs that are stored in there as well. So in last week, the week before, we looked at, where, you know, what was our mother's beliefs around money? What were our father's beliefs around money? And what were we taught about money as children? So, you know, did you go out with your mum shopping, and was she, you know, did you observe her being really, like, my mum was a real spendthrift, so that when we went out food shopping, she would be always looking for a bargain and looking for ways to scrimp and save, and how we could get the most bang for our buck, so to speak. Whereas my dad, he was much more liberal and generous with his money. So he wasn't counting his pennies. I mean, he was respectful with money and he was careful with it. But, you know, if it was a choice between, he would probably buy, you know, a better quality cut of meat, rather than my mum would buy the cheaper cut of meat and save a couple of dollars and then know that she could cook it longer to make it nice and tender and delicious. Whereas my dad, he would just buy the better cut and be done with it. So they're the sort of things that are programs that are then stored in our brain about how we should do money. And in order to change those programs, because we, you know, as adults ourselves now, we don't necessarily need to live by the way our parents taught us as children. We need to do things differently. You know, we want to do things differently. And there might be some things that we might want to do the same. Like, I really abhor spending money unnecessarily. And I really like that about myself. So I'm really happy with that program that's there. However, you know, it was probably to the point where I would never spend any money on myself, and I wouldn't ever be extravagant and buy something really special for myself if I wanted it. So, you know, I just took from what we took from my parents, what works for me, and now I'm able to make a conscious decision and be aware of all those programs and say, okay, so my program is that this, you know, this outfit, you know, is a couple of $100, and there's no way my mum would have bought that when I was little, you know, in relative terms. You know, is this something that I really want and I'm willing to spend the money on, so that I'm not just driven by the programs that just says, no way, that's $200, too expensive, forget about it. So that's where we want to get to with our money. It's the same with earning money. So, you know, did your parents value themselves when they were earning money? You know, a lot of people, there are a lot of women whose mothers, they never went out to work. They never saw their mothers work or get paid. And, you know, but as women, you know, most of us do want to work and we do want to get paid well for our services. But do we have that running program to say, you know, that women aren't worthy of getting paid, or, you know, we should really be in the home with our children, or whatever it might be? And there's no judgment around those different belief systems. It's about finding what's actually driving you and what works for you. And that's in order to change those belief systems, the first thing we need to do is be aware of them. And then the second thing we need to do is to have some repetition about changing them. So we have all of our brain, the programs are stored in neural pathways. So I really like to use this picture of this dirt track when I talk about the brain and neural pathways. So this dirt track was created by repetition, by the four-wheel drive or the car or whatever it is, continuously driving over this grass again and again, and the track became well worn, but the grass still grows, or it's not really, couldn't really call it grass, but you know what I mean, the dry grasses still grow around that dirt track. Now our brains work very similar. So through repetition, we've created this dirt track, and when the driver hops in his car, the car just kind of goes along the dirt track by default. If the car actually wants to make a change and create a new path, so let's just say at the beginning of this picture here, the car and the driver decided that they wanted to make a new track onto the left there. At first, he would actually really have to physically turn the wheel and go over those bumps and over all the bumps along the way until he'd been over it maybe 20 or 30 times, in which case this track that's going straight ahead would start getting grass growing over it, and the new road would become the default road for the car. So that's exactly how our belief systems can be changed and how we can create new habits when it comes to anything in our lives. Money in particular is what we're talking about here. When I used to work with elite athletes in my days when I was a sports psychologist, I used to see the same thing when they were learning to alter a skill. So if they had formed a specific habit around a skill when they were younger, when they were growing up, as they were, teaching themselves, say, how to play footy. Then as an adult, they'd get a specialist coach in, and this coach would say, actually, you really need to change your kicking technique because it's just too inaccurate. There are too much margin for error the way you're doing it that you were taught as a child, or that for most kids that they taught themselves. So in order to create that new habit of kicking style, they had to repetitively do the skill over and over again to retrain the brain about that new way, so that when it was in a game and the pressure was on, that it became automatic for them. The other thing too is that I was going to say something else about the retraining the brain. It's gone. Never mind. So it's really important. That's the other thing I was going to say, that using visualization to practice the new technique works just as well as actually physically practicing. And it's the same with our belief systems. And that's why affirmations are so powerful, and why doing a meditation or a visualization is really powerful in changing your programs as well. And it really annoys me to see how many athletes get overuse injuries because they are training and training and training and training in an attempt to get better and become automatic. And they have all these physical injuries. It's just a bit of a side note, when if they were taught properly how to visualize, they could do that just as well as if they're actually physically doing it. So there have been studies to show that it changes the brain's pathways just the same. So one of the reasons why this money mindset makeover does go for 28 days, which, for some people is quite a long time to stick at it, is because of this repetition required to change the brain. It's really important to stick at it and keep going. Now, if you're listening to this and you haven't done any of the exercises so far, and you've only read a handful of the emails, or you've read most of the emails but not done most of the exercises, that's completely fine. I want you to start again today we've only got really these 5 days exercises, and then next week there are 3 more days, which is mainly resources for you to go away if you want to do some more further reading or other meditations and affirmations that I've got there. So I hope that's explained how the brain works and why we're actually doing what we're doing. Stick at the process, and let me know if any of you want, if you're watching this and you want a bit of one-on-one coaching around uncovering your programs and helping you to become conscious of them and change them, because certainly up for helping you in a more one-on-one, in a sort of a deeper level to meet your needs exactly. So that's pretty much all that I had prepared for today. And I wanted to, I'd love to have heard from some of you about if any unexpected money has arrived for you so far, what you're appreciating a bit better in your life. These are the real key things, key takeaway messages are to really continue to appreciate what's happening in your life. And what programs have you identified that you'd like to alter? So something that I had a real aha moment about I don't know if it was a week or 2 weeks ago, where my goals for my business were to invoice a certain amount of money every month as a minimum. And that was a goal for my business. And I've been doing that for a long, long, long time. I've been thinking about how much I would like to invoice. And as of the end of the financial year, I had about $25,000 or $30,000 owing to me from people who, couldn't afford to pay me yet, or just haven't paid me. And so the whole idea of invoicing per month is sort of a good theoretical goal or target to have, but I needed to shift my focus to actually how much money was landing in my bank account every month. And I made a set amount for that in July, which was the amount previously that I had been invoicing for. But if you're not actually receiving the money, it's not really much help. And come the 31st of July, I checked my bank and I thought, I'm going to add up how much I've actually received as deposits And I was about $250 below my target. And I was pretty happy with that. I was like, that's pretty close. I'm quite happy with that. And then the next day I had to do some banking and I hopped in and I discovered that someone had done a $497 payment for some coaching late that afternoon, the day before. And I actually ended up being $250 over my target for that month. So I was very, very happy with that. So that's going to be my goal for the future. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because I know that for some of you listening that are in your own business, I'm just sharing it because you might have your own targets per month or per quarter or whatever that you're working towards. And, there might be a delay in actually seeing that money. So instead, I just encourage you to think about how much money, your income that you're actually receiving each month instead. So it might not work for you, but it's just a suggestion. So just going to, and just allow yourself to dream. And in a minute, I'm just going to answer any questions, but I'll just come back to this and see if, Julie, I was just going to ask you if you've got any money programs that you could share that you inherited from your parents or from your just cultural programs around money. And, it's interesting because this week, just before you answer, I just had another thought as well. This week, we're talking about the feeling worthy to receive money. And I had a flash, as I read the email this morning, I had a flash of a memory of me growing up. And I grew up in the Catholic education. I went to a Catholic primary school and a Catholic secondary school. And whilst we weren't practicing Catholics, we didn't go to Mass every Sunday. We certainly went on a regular basis as children because there were various school masses, and we always went at Easter and Christmas. And, to funerals and weddings as well, where they had full masses. And I remember as a child, my favourite saying in the whole Mass was, "Lord, I am not worthy to receive, but I only say the word and I shall be healed." And that was like my favourite thing to say for like the whole Mass. And now that I know what I know about the subconscious brain and about messages, I'm looking back and I'm thinking, wow, what kind of a message was that, saying that I'm not worthy to receive, but if I ask your permission then to God, then it's okay. It's like, what the hell message is that for a child? So little things like that we might not even barely remember, can be really, quite astonishingly powerful in our program. So that was just another thing that I wanted to share. So Julie, anything from your point of view, programs about money?
Well, one of the things that one of my friends actually picked me up on was, I would say, the universe always provides for what we need. And I realized that that's why we just keep going. It doesn't matter how much income comes in, it always goes out. And so I changed that speaking, and I'm really conscious of that. The universe always provides what we want and need. Yeah. And I feel like that one thing has actually shifted my energy profoundly. And that's why so many more opportunities have come in the last couple of weeks since I had that awareness. And I feel freer. I feel like I've smashed the glass ceiling, and that now I'm on my way. And the friend that brought that to my attention said, "Julie, you're standing at the floodgates, but you've just got to let one thing go." And what was interesting was that I've created this work over the last 33 years. And she said to me, "It's like you are too scared to let the baby go." And I realized the truth of that. And so I was holding on too tightly to something that I did want to let go consciously, but subconsciously I felt like I couldn't let it go. And so this program has helped me realize what I'm actually thinking to block my flow. And so that's been really good. So I actually really appreciate that insight, which has been really good. The other thing that I feel like I have a freedom to ask for money and receive it. And I've been okay with asking for smaller amounts, but when you're saying to somebody, my work's worth $2,000, you know, you have to believe it. And I came to that resonance last week when I was speaking to the lady that just said, yeah, I want it. She didn't even ask the price. And I was able to just say, well, that's blah, blah, blah. And she said, that's fine, I'll just get my credit card. So for someone to believe in my work actually impacted on my cells and my neural pathways. So I feel like I can now stand tall and just say to people, well, this is what the price is. And not have that change in resonance or vibration of my voice that I am hesitant about asking, or that I'm not confident of what I'm doing, because I'm very confident in it. And so that's all come about in this last week. So,
and as a child, if you were to ask for something that you wanted, what would have been your parents' response?
My parents would have probably said, we can't afford that right now.
Yeah. But so as a child...
And I can see that I still say that.
Yeah. So as a child, what you needed was provided, but not necessarily what you wanted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, all our needs were met. So I've not ever had a problem about our needs being met. It was what I wanted. But I did have moments where I really wanted to travel. And so I made a commitment to myself, and I saved an incredible amount of money in 18 months and did a first-class trip around America. And then I came home, and I haven't ever been able to get into that vibration again. So something must have happened around that time. I think what happened was I left home then. So my security had gone, and I had to grow up. Like at 19, 20, I left home I don't think I'd turned 20. I left home at 19. And I had to be responsible for everything. And I just found that life had a lot of demands on my money. And I didn't ever get into that routine again of being a really good saver and rewarding myself. So that's where I'm back into that now. So I'm paying myself first instead of last.
Yeah. Excellent. So it's just such good insights. Yeah, it is. It's great, because there are, most of us, like heaps of, the reality is that as a parent, like you can't give your children, it's actually not a good thing to give your child everything that they want anyway. But for many of us growing up, we were punished if we did something bad, or we were rewarded if we did something good. And so we often define ourselves as adults based on what we're doing, whether we should be rewarded or whether we should be punished, whether money should be withheld from us, whether we should get a gift for ourselves. And so there's just all this different charge around money that it's just no longer relevant for us as adults. So, when it comes to making choices about money and earning money, and if we're an employee, having the courage to ask for a pay rise or go for a job that, is paying us what we're worth for our skills and what we bring to it. And there's all that. So that's why it's really important to look at where we come from as a child, and were we given, How worthy did you feel? Were you given what you needed, what you wanted? You know, for some people, even their needs were barely met. You know, they might have lived in a very difficult, abusive parent relationship, and they might not have known where they were going to live. And so, you know, there's a lot around that. And as children, of course, we're entirely dependent on our parents for looking after us. Whereas adults, we're dependent on ourselves for looking after us. And, you know, it's a very different dynamic. So I've got a couple of questions that a couple of people asked me to refer to today on our call. And one of them is, how often should you say the affirmations? If, you know, we at the very beginning, we started off with some affirmations. And what if I feel weird saying them because I know they're not true? And they're really, really good points, because you can say affirmations out loud, and at the beginning they're not true. And the reason why they're not true at the beginning is because your brain is going down that other neural pathway. So everything I want and need comes to me easily and effortlessly is like, that's just crap. Well, I have to work really, really hard for everything that I want and need, because you've got that brainwave down there. So what I say to that is, I say to pretend and put on like a bit of a cloak or a mask or a different persona for that minute while you're saying the affirmations, and pretend as if it is true for you right now. So pretend you're an actor in a drama series where you have to fall in love with someone who you might not even particularly like in real life, or whatever it is, and say them with conviction, or be childlike. You know, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and she loves acting out different characters. And while she's acting out the teacher or the student or the mum or the baby in her little games that she plays either by herself or with her friends, she becomes that mum that's looking after the baby, or she becomes the school teacher. And when you're saying the affirmation, become that person just for that minute for whom that is true. And it's actually called quantum jumping, is the actual law of attraction kind of spiel for it. It's where you project yourself, you know, you bring your future self into the here and now and say, okay, can this be true for me just for this 3 minutes that I'm citing these affirmations? So, you know, and when should I say them? Put them up laminate them and stick them up in your shower and read them out loud while you're standing in the shower every morning if you're someone who can't remember. Or put them somewhere where your subconscious brain will just see them, you know, beside your computer, on your notice board, wherever you'll be able to see them, or on your fridge at home, and just let that energy of the words, the vibration, get to you. Now, it might be years until you can really fully embody it. But as someone who's been doing it for a long period of time, trust me, it's worth it. So I encourage you to keep going with them. So another question is, so what can I do on days where I feel really down or just can't see a way out in terms of my money or my energy or my vibration or something like that? And for me, I'm a realist. So as human beings, we need to express the way we're feeling and be okay with the way we're feeling at that time. So if you're feeling like in despair and you just, you know, money's a real issue for you and you just don't know where the next dollar is going to come from, then just sit with that and have a cry if you need to have a cry. Have a yell, go out into the forest and yell and say, what is going on and who's going to help me? And, you know, so really it's really important to get the emotion out. And then once we've got the emotion out, then I would encourage you to do some journaling, to journal your feelings. Just do what I call a stream of consciousness writing, where anything that comes into your head, you just write down. I hate my life. This is terrible. What am I going to do? I just don't know what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. And you'll find that will really help to get the feelings out, and you'll wake up the next morning feeling much, much better. Did you want to say anything on that, Julie?
I just wanted to show what I've done. I have on a piece of photo paper, I drew around the edges of it and I printed my affirmations on there, and it sits on my desk, and I laminated it so it could go in the shower. And I read that regularly, but also I'm getting it subliminally, because even though my conscious mind might not be reading it, I'm seeing it, and it's reminding me of what I want.
Yeah, it's in your awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's about all that I had. I'll just share my screen again and talk about what we're doing this week and next week. So continue to allow yourself to dream. That was my other message, take-home message. Some questions that we had. And coming up this week, we're looking at worth and receiving. So there's a school of thought that says, and I totally believe this, that we will only allow or keep the money we feel we actually deserve or are worthy of. So even if you get to the point where you can earn more money, which is great, what I find and what I see with people is that more money will go out if they won't actually keep the money. So we see this in, Tats Lotto winners. I think more of them end up with less money than they started with. I think there's something like 75% of Lotto winners end up with less than they started with after 2 years. Like, it's scary, scary stuff. People who might receive an inheritance and get a lump sum of money that way, they might invest it. Things might go sour. They might just spend it and end up a couple of years later thinking, where did that money go? So it's really important that we work up our self-worth, and that's what the exercises are designed to do for this week. So definitely encourage you to have a go at this week. And then next week I share all my best money resources to help you continue your journey if you want to do some further reading or watching some YouTube videos or whatever. So I look forward to celebrating you more with the Facebook group, and that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I've done that. Celebrating more with you in the Facebook group, it should say. There you go. Fix on the run. Thanks for being on, Julie, and joining me. And I hope those of you who are watching the replay enjoy the information. And we'll catch you again. Yeah. See you when I see you, I guess.
Thanks,
Bye for now. Bye.